Hey, Murderish listeners, I've got a podcast recommendation for you. Live, Laugh, Larceny is a podcast where the worlds of true crime and comedy intersect, but in a way that doesn't have to toe the line of ethics, because hosts Amanda and Trevin don't cover dark murder cases. Instead, they cover cases like the one where two old men got into a fight at Costco after one cut in front of the other for a free sample. Listen, I'm not going to lie, I relate to this case because those Costco samples are almost worth a felony assault conviction. Almost. You guys, I share your obsession with learning about true crime cases, even those involving the most heinous details. That said, a nice palate cleanser isn't a bad thing, and that's exactly the reason I like listening to Live, Laugh, Larceny. I laugh out loud in my car while I'm listening to Amanda and Trevin detail a ridiculously petty crime in a really dramatic tone. I'm talking moody music, colorful sound effects, and all. Imagine an investigation discovery audio documentary on something as brutal as a stolen lawn ornament. Each week on Live, Laugh, Larceny, you'll hear two petty crime stories along with some killer facts. I'm telling you, this parody podcast is the perfect break from all the dark crime podcasts you're currently binging. And guess what? I'm about to play a sample of Live, Laugh, Larceny for you right now. So while you're listening, make sure to hit subscribe or follow so you don't miss out on the perfect palate-cleansing satire podcast that will definitely make you LOL. Please enjoy this preview of Live, Laugh, Larceny.
As soon as they arrived at the party, David felt extremely out of place. This was nothing like Grandma's Wild Friday bingo nights. There was loud music, topless young ladies, and someone had even spilled snacks all over a couch. Just as soon as he considered leaving, the host of the party offered David a beer and told him to help himself to the fridge.
Have a drink. You're creeping people out.
"What a hospitable host," David exclaimed as he grabbed himself 2 beers, one for each hand. He wasn't much of a drinker, but he thought that a couple beers couldn't hurt. He slowly sipped the foamy, cool brew as his hips gently swayed to the party music.
I love this song.
It wasn't long before 2 hours had passed, and David had finished both beers. He politely excused himself from the party as his neighbors reassured him that they would find a ride home. Instead of turning his car radio on to his go-to jazz station, David chose the unfamiliar rock one to accompany him on his short drive home. He felt like a new man, a party-going man. He shook his head up and down to the rock beat and even played some air guitar while trying to stay straight on the road.
Oh, shit.
Unfortunately, his one-man rock band was quickly interrupted as he saw bright red and blue lights quickly approaching his car. David began to panic as he heard the disappointed voice of his grandmother ringing over and over again in his head about drinking and driving.
I am so disappointed.
This could not be the way his night ended. What would Party David do? That is when he decided to pull over and run from his vehicle. Just as drinking wasn't something David did often, neither was running. He had only taken a few long strides when a police officer tackled him to the side of the road. The officer informed him that he had been swerving all over and that they would need to breathalyze him as they placed David in the back seat of the patrol car. The lecturing voice of his strict grandmother again replayed in his mind.
I am still disappointed.
He frantically looked around the back seat for something to soak up the 2 beers he had consumed earlier that evening, but found nothing. That is when a second idea formed in David's mind. He quickly and aggressively ripped out the crotch of his underwear and shoved the cloth deep into his mouth. As he began to chew, he felt a huge sense of defeat. There was no way he would be able to stomach that butt cloth he had partied in all evening. Finally giving in to the consequences, he spit out the chunk of crotch cloth and waited for his punishment. In the end, David Zerfla was acquitted of impaired driving in court, due to the fact that he had only blown a .08 on his breathalyzer test and was well within the legal limits. Even though David had avoided charges, he couldn't avoid the public shame of his story being shared. That particular day in court, rows of high school students interested in law were present as court observers. The arrest was described in great detail.
That is when my client ripped off his panties and attempted to eat them.
The teacher ultimately had to escort his high school students out of the courtroom after the detail about David trying to ingest his own undies was announced. The students' eyes were filled with tears as they left the court and tried to muffle their snickers. Meanwhile, David's grandmother shook her head as she sat in the row behind him. Sometimes even the most pure-intended people commit petty crimes. And some of the most innocent of crimes are covered up unsuccessfully. We all make mistakes, and we all have an older relative that frowns upon those mistakes. But there is nothing worth eating your undies over.
Thank you for listening to this preview of our show. To hear the full story and many other petty crimes, listen and subscribe to Live Laugh Larceny on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.